Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Ryan, and together with Aaron, we are the RA 2-in-1 podcast, a really adult show. Welcome back. So today, it's been a long while since we've done our last episode, almost a month. We had like a little hiatus, a little break. So before we start, how are you, Aaron? It's been a
Oh,
while.
great, great. Yeah, it's been a while. It's like usually when we say like a break 1 month, but actually in reality we actually take a 2 months break, right? Because we only like do like one episode a month. So usually when we take a 1 month break, it's really a very good break because you probably won't see us for a good 2 months. Yeah, so it's been good lah. I mean, I enjoyed the holidays. I enjoyed Chinese New Year, and it's been a pretty good start to the year. I would say like everything has been pretty good. And I hope this goes out to the rest of you as well. I hope that this year has been a pretty good festive year after CNY, after New Year's, after Christmas. So it's been good. How about you, Ryan?
Yeah, for me, it's been great as well. Like you, I celebrated the festive season, Christmas, and then there was like the New Year's, Chinese New Year, and then more recently Valentine's. So yeah, it was a really nice and quiet period. But work-wise, I see the economy picking up. At my work also, things are picking up really, really quickly. I have been drowning at work, even more so than before. But all things considered, it's good.
Yeah, that's great. I'm also actually seeing the same thing on my end. Like on the ground now, I would say that business is definitely picking up, and prices has pretty much stopped increasing. Yeah, that's on my end. I'm actually seeing prices now coming down instead of increasing. So that's a good sign, I think, for many people, because I think last year was really a year of inflation, right? Everyone felt the hit, right? Rental increase, interest rate increase, bloody hell, even your cai peng also increase. It's bad when the cai peng auntie has to increase her price.
Yeah.
Right? It's bad. So yeah, I mean, it's high time that, I guess like we come back to the topic that we want to discuss today, right? And basically, like, it's been the big hoo-ha of, like, artificial intelligence. And this is really like the episode that we wanted to do today, which is AI, and what does it stand for? How is it going to change? And while actually like crafting this episode, right, we really wanted to like um do it in a way where it's easy for the layman to understand. So basically today's like episode, right, we want to craft it around the three huge sub segments lah. So in this particular case, the best way to explain it, right, is that when you do work, right, whatever work it is, Ryan, you are in a data heavy industry, right? So when you do work, whatever it is, right, usually there is three steps to the workflow, right? The first step
Mhm.
is what you call input, right? So you feed in the data. So what is it that you need? Usually it starts from a command. Usually it starts to like let's say okay, do this work or do what work. Then you need to be very specific with the input that you want it to do. All right. So for example, if you are in charge of like water, like data simulation, right? Then you want basically the input that you need to get are possibly things like maybe the location, for one thing. Then also like the estimated like rainfall, over the historical rainfall or something like that.
Yep.
Then that's the data. That's what you call the input. So now the thing is that you want to have an output, right? So the output basically states that, for example, like what is it that you want to achieve at the end of this basically work or this job. So basically you have to go through a process, right? So I would say that work has definitely changed a lot since like the last century or so, because when Henry Ford created the car system, right, basically his objective of the output was to create mass manufactured cars. So the input is that he needs to put in a lot of ideation into making sure that the manufacturing process was very streamlined. So that was his input idea. Then the process was basically the manufacturing line, right? So he has a lot of human workers just basically very focused on a single work on building the car. Then the output is that he has mass manufactured car. So that is one way where you can see the physical change. Now, of course, today now you see Tesla. They basically just create the whole process, right? They eliminated a lot of physical workers because they just replaced them with robots, and then they also do the machine press. So in a way, the process is what we're really talking about today, because that is really the power of artificial intelligence, right? Because AI, what you realize when you like see these three sub segments, right? AI is really powerless, right? When you don't have good input and you don't have a desired output. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So yeah, so you need to start with a goal in mind, and that is your output. And you also need to make sure that when you get that correct output that you want, you need to make sure, right, that the input, the data that you feed in, is good before you even think about process. Does that make sense?
Yeah. In modeling, right, we have this saying, Rubbish in, rubbish out.
Yeah.
So if you put some rubbish data in your AI, then the AI is gonna output rubbish results as well.
Yeah, and that is why I love this analogy so much, right? Because a lot of people, always tell me since like when I started work, they always say, "Oh, your jobs are going to be replaced by robot." But actually, when you really stop and think about it, right, what technology advancement and things like you talk about AI, people are so worried, but they forget the big idea, right? That no matter how powerful AI can be, right, if you have very crappy input, you will get a very shitty output. Because end of the day, what AI and technology really does is that it makes the process very efficient. What would take a person in a web design, for example, when I study web design, it would take me like 5, 7 to 14 days to create a website, right? Through like coding, hard coding, HTML. And last time it wasn't even HTML5. Last time I had to use a like bloody like fucking what was that? Flash. Is it Flash? I can't even
Oh yeah,
remember.
yeah,
Was
yeah.
it Flash? Yeah, see, like that
I
was
think
like
so.
the Adobe plugin, right? Last time they were still using Flash, they didn't use HTML5, and back then it was like so buggy, right? So,
Yes.
and then now you want to set up a website, yeah, screw it, I can do it in less than 1 hour, right? Because then you have like so many like Squarespace lookalikes,
Squarespace,
right? There are
Wix, yeah.
so many of these like things which you can do in the other 1 hour. So but then when you really step back and think about it, right, it's not really that the input and output has changed. Because really, when you think about like creating a product or service, right, what you really realize is that the output, right, is still the same. It's just that the way you get to the output has changed dramatically over the years. Like for example, you want to manufacture a car, let's say, right? In Henry Ford's time, right, when he was wanted to manufacture a car, he needed at back that time, right, he didn't have the technological advancements or what Tesla had today. So he obviously didn't have access to a giga press. He obviously didn't have the technology and the know-how back then. The computers, were not the computers were invented in the 1950s, by the way, which is basically our next topic for the history of AI, right? And basically, later when we run through it, what you're going to realize is that AI couldn't have possibly existed 100 years ago because we first needed to invent the computer and
Yes.
the microchips, right? Before you can get to a level where the computational power of the chips, right, were able to basically make AI a reality.
Yep.
Right. So basically, like we're going to go through a lot of this, and it's why I think today's episode is going to be one of the best episodes that we have, I think, like going forward. So what do you think about this, Ryan? Like I guess we can go on first to the first topic of the podcast, right? Which is the history of AI. So Ryan, I think I want to ask you on this because I think you probably know this better than me. So like maybe you would like to talk a little about the history of AI and what is it that I guess what you can try and translate to is like what are the key pivotal moments in history that you would think that you realize that AI is actually a thing that we can use?
Well, before we begin, right, I just want to clarify that I'm no expert in AI or
Neither
computer
am I.
science.
Neither am I. Just saying, neither am I. But it's
I'm
okay
just I'm
because
just a user of the product only.
yeah. But I think it's great because it means that we can like basically tell you guys like how much it has changed both of our lives because both of us has been very huge beneficiaries of this technology.
Yeah, but I guess to come back on the history of AI and how it's all invented and everything, right? So we have to go back to ancient times, when computers are before like computers are invented. So there are some certain things that mimic human behavior, like that automates things. Let's say like some machines, like those ancient scientists like Archimedes or like Greek philosophers they would come up with. So these are kind of like the foundation of like AI, because all these machineries, right? They mimic a certain human behavior, and that's what AI is all about. So fast forward to like 1950s, right after World War I, you have like the computers being invented, and then people start to apply this on maths, right? So it became so in essence, right, in the 1950s, computers started out as like a super calculator. So people used computers to decipher like in a Morse code, like in like during the wars, right? They would have like all these telegrams and everything, and then they would like intercept and try to decipher the message. So computers were kind of like used for that in the beginning, and then mathematicians and scientists realized that it had like it can do a lot of calculations very quickly, more than the human mind can do so. Because like even back then, like with the first iterations of the computers, right, it's already like kind of like a super calculator already. but it looks very different from what it is today lah. Before then, maybe they don't have like the semiconductors and everything. You know, it was just based on like pure mathematical sequencing of like some machinery, gears or stuff like that, and then slowly going into like the 60s, where things become slowly, you add like electricity into the mix, right? Then computers start to become faster, better, stronger, and then it became kind of like a field of study. So, fun fact, right? Machine learning is kind of like born in the 1960s or 70s, where there's like all the buzzwords like algorithms, like systems and all that. Those were kind of like created in the 60s or 70s. And then, as we all know, back then, right, the computing power was weak, like what Aaron mentioned just now. So all this wasn't really feasible. It was more of like a concept at that point in time. Because even if you understand the statistics behind all this data, or like back then there was no data science. They just simply called it statistics. You know, you still don't have the raw computational power to do all this kind of calculations. And then because it was so developed ahead of its time, right? Between the 1980s to 90s, there wasn't really any advancements. So this period is commonly known as the AI winter, lah. So kind of like crypto winter, but then there's no stock action, lah. So there was not really a lot of development. And then fast forward to today, right? Slowly it picked up. Like say during the tech boom, and then like with like computers becoming more mainstream, thanks to IBM, Dell, Microsoft, Apple, these companies, semiconductors becoming faster and faster, Intel, Nvidia, and all this. So with new technology like this, right, AI became something that was feasible again. So for the last 10, 20 years, there has been a lot of development going into AI. And yeah, it's evolved to what we call ChatGPT today.
Wow, that was a very, very good like summarization of the AI history. And I would say that my findings is quite similar to what Ryan has actually like summarized. Because it's quite amazing to think about, right? That you realize that if you really like dig into like the birth of the computer to what we have today, which is most recently known as ChatGPT, it only took us 70 years to get here, right?
Yeah.
So in the past 70 years, right, you realize that we landed a man on the moon, you know. Then I also used to read like novels, right, back in the day, where the computer was first like invented, right? And then I remember reading a sentence in a paragraph where they says the character actually says that within the next 20 years, right? But this was back then, right, where basically computers were not a thing yet. It was basically still the Mac tool. So basically, people didn't even have phones. They didn't even have the mobile phones, right? And she would say, there was this paragraph. I think the novel was written in 1980s to 1990s, right, where the computing power of what sent a man onto space would be compressed into the palm of your hand, you know. And I realized, right, that technological like change really did happen, like, because when you think about it today, right, I always like to use the word, the common notion, right, when the first thing you wake up, the first thing you touch is most likely your phone, right? And then you realize that the power of computing has advanced so much. All right, so I would like to point out towards the history, right, to make it more succinct for our viewers, right, and that is basically there are two pivotal, I would say, breakthroughs and historical moments which I felt that AI was becoming a thing. So the first time, right, is when in the 1997, right, that was when they actually invented this AI machine called the chess called Deep Blue, right, and this was Deep Blue, this algorithm, this computer was a watershed moment in the history of AI because it marked the first time in history, right, where the computer actually defeated a human world chess champion in a competitive match. All right, and this was in 1997 in Kasparov. So, if you want to quantify it, right, if you want to really like quantify the in terms of how much how hard it is, right? In terms of numerically, right? The number of like calculations you need to perform, right? Back then when computers was invented, right? When they did the calculation, can do like by the way, the computer was actually invented to basically look for taxation to tax evaders. That was one of the main reasons why they invented the computer, was to basically like calculate like what's the likelihood, right, that people would have evaded tax. So that was the IRS was a huge proponent of the push out for like computers, back then. Then on top of that, right, okay, coming back to the chess, right, it takes about in chess, right, the average number of possible moves in any given position is 35. Right, so 35 times. So basically, when you do a calculation of when you do a chess calculation, right, you need to basically calculate like what's the likelihood that what's the best position. Then you remember a lot of the things, right? It's about 35. But for Go, it's 250. That's about 7 times more than what you would see inside chess. But it is when anybody who has like study math, basically if you basically go through the math education system, you realize that from 35 to 250, that's 7 times potential moves, right? When you talk about exponential increase in calculation, right? For chess, right, it's only 10 to the power of 80, right? But
Mm.
for Go, in order for you to estimate, right, it's not 10 to the power of 80. It's 20,000 to the power of 170. All right.
Yeah, that's
So
not
so you
humanly possible.
yeah, so in terms of like creating an AI, you're talking about a feat, right? That number of calculation power that requires the AI to basically compute to beat a Go player, right, who was able to do that a lot faster. It takes a very long time. So in chess, the one that was able to defeat Gary Kasparov, right, was in 1997, right? But for the Go, all right, it took them close to 20 years, right, in order for the hardware to catch up, right? Because in 1997, the tech boom has not really boomed yet. The internet was not really like mainstream yet. The internet only really became mainstream, I think, in 2000s, in the 2000s era, right, where
Yep.
basically we need to shift from 56K dial-up modems that get disconnected every one call your house into basically something which what we use the fiber optic cable today, right? So basically like the reason why a lot of these like calculations couldn't really catch up is because we had a lot of hardware limitations that need to be solved by engineers, right? So it took them about 20 years for them to basically like do the hardware limitations. Then if you understand like semiconducting basically manufacturing, right, the Moore's law is that every given year you're able to double the size of the transistors in a microchip, right? So obviously over the 20 years that they do it, right, basically you double every year. That basically what we are experiencing today, and why ChatGPT is being born is because now we have reached a moment in time where the ability to basically like do ChatGPT of generative AI has finally caught up with what we really want, which started. Remember, I told you guys early in the episode, input, process, output. The output that they wanted, right, was to be able to calculate, basically get the robot to do things, the output as fast as humanly possible process. But in order for them to actually get that process, the input, which is the hardware, they first need to solve that problem first. And today, I think the ChatGPT was launched in last year only I think a few months ago, and they have
Yeah.
finally caught up, right, to basically do what we wanted 70 years ago, right? So this is a very beautiful like story illustration of it took us 70 years to get there, but then if you look at the goal calculation, the chess to go, right, it took us 20 years. So we had to go through the internet boom. We had to go through the smartphone, the mobile phone, and we also had to go through the movement. Do you still remember back then the laptops? The battery life was very shit. Do you guys still remember, if you are old enough, right? Like back then, the battery life of the laptop is like 3 hours. Then every time you have to carry around a bloody spare battery
Yeah.
for your laptop in case you cannot find a power outlet, right? Then also like your phones back then also was like couldn't do anything except just to call and SMS. Right. So if you belong to the era where you can use your phone to play the snake game, you're old enough to realize that we have come far, we have come a long ways over the last 20 years. Right. So this is like a very good introduction to AI, I feel, because I think you guys need to understand like basically the moral of the story, right, is that when you look through the history of AI, every single time, right, people always say, "Oh, computer is going to replace my job," right? Things are always going to change my job. But I think in order for you to answer the question whether or not you need to be afraid of this tech, is that you first need to understand how does ChatGPT work, right? Ryan, do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, before we go into like how ChatGPT in general works, right? I think we need to cover a little bit on like what is AI and um how it actually works, lah. Because
Sure.
the thing about like AI, and why a lot of people are kind of like afraid of it, right, is because people don't quite understand what AI is. So, in essence, right, to make it super simple, right, AI is a very complex algorithm. So if you have like say an algorithm, so usually an algorithm consists of like if or else. A little bit more, if you go a little bit more complex, then you have a lot of like if else, otherwise it does this, if it's not this then do that, you know. And then when it becomes when this collection of like if else statements get like extremely complex, right, then we call it an algorithm. And then if we stack algorithm on top of algorithm, and it becomes so complex, right, that it becomes able to take in like a lot of different and unaccounted for kind of like inputs, right, then we call it an AI. So but basically in the core, right, it's a statistical model built from if else statements. So this is what we need to understand. So if else, and then if there's like any other like restrictions, you know, this is where we'll put restrictions on the AI. If this don't do that, you know. So that's AI. And then what Chat GPT is, right? Is essentially a language model. So when we say a language model, right, it's not to say like it's like it understands what is English, it understands what is Spanish or Chinese. Now, when we say like language models, the input is usually text based. So in essence, for a computer, right, if you understand a little bit of like computer science, all these alphabets, they all have like a one and zero sequences.
Yep.
So all this text input, right? Like let's say you put like a certain sentence into ChatGPT. This sentence is broken down into this sequence, right? One and zero sequence, and then from this one and zero sequence, ChatGPT will understand what you are talking about, and then based on like a very complex statistical model, it generates the output that has like high correlation, very very high correlation as the output lah, basically it. So that is how ChatGPT works. But the statistical model that they use is like powered by all this what we call GPU acceleration. Basically, you have like a shit ton of GPU. It looks kind of like if it looks kind of like Tesla Dojo, you know, or like what do you call this? The like if for anyone who remembers, you know, proof of work Ethereum, you know, you use GPU mining, and then the setup looks like that lah, basically. You know, you have like a lot of GPUs, and then you group the GPUs into what the computer scientists like to call clusters, and then you do your calculations on the GPU. So basically that is ChatGPT. But uh as you can imagine, if you put in like say a word, right, the sequence is already quite long already, because I don't know what are the exact sequences, but I remember for like one alphabet there's like 13 one and zeros at
Yep.
least, and then
Yep.
if you put in a sentence, you know, it will be a very very long sequence.
Yep.
And
It's not
that's
so
why
simple as 1 + 1, right?
no, it's not.
Yeah.
And this is what the computer scientists or the data scientists like to call um, na- natural language processing. So
Yep.
NLP. So
Mm.
this is generally how it works in simplistic words.
Yeah, so I like to like kick in, and that is the point about how difficult it was to get here, right? This is also why, ladies and gentlemen, the calculators was invented first, because it is a lot easier, right? For in terms, if you understand computer science, right, it is a lot easier to ask a computer, right, to calculate what is 1 + 1 versus, right, teach me how to lose weight.
Yes.
Right. So to put it, because like mathematically, right, the original intent of the computers, right, is the word computers comes from the word compute, right? It is very a lot easier for computer, right, to compute because generally the way that computers work, right, is that their only language they understand is one and zero. It's the on and off switch. That's it. On is one and off is zero. So basically, right, for you to do computing, right, the way that computers communicate with each other, if you study computer science, right, is that they are basically exchanging one and zero at God knows lightning speeds, right? And each transistor that we were mentioning, right, is basically a makeup of one of the light switch that goes on, which represents one, and when it turns off, it represents zero. So in order for, let's say, a computer to recognize, let's say, the letter A, right, just now, right, mentions there's like 13 sequences, right? It means it might be a case where the transistor, right, need to light up 1111 00 1111 1111. Then that represents A, right? So then basically they do the computing over there, right? It goes through the process called the black box. I just call it the black box. So it's easy for our audience to understand. So basically your input, right, is basically what is 1 plus 1. Then the process that the computer goes through is 110, blah, 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 blah. They do up the numbers like a sequences of 1 and 0. Then the output is, therefore the answer is 2, right? So this is
Yes.
a lot easier, right? Which is why, the calculators were born first, Excel was born first. Now, the difficulty about AI, right, is that because the input is so varied. The data is so varied. So basically, when you look at ChatGPT, right, it contains, right, up to 2021, the amount of, you see, this couldn't have been born without the World Wide Web. You agree?
Yep.
It couldn't have been born without World Wide Web because it took us close to 20 years since the birth of the World Wide Web to gather 45 terabytes of text data from the internet. All right. And then we input inside the AI for it to learn, right? So you think about all the times where you post an Instagram post, think about all the articles that has been written, right, since the beginning of the birth of the internet, right, over the past like 20 years. You take everything, right, that's called the input, you feed it inside the computer, right? Just now Ryan mentioning was all the computers, right? You feed it inside in, you run an algorithm, which what Ryan just now describes was an idea that was born in the 1970s, right? You run an algorithm to be able to recognize the language patterns, which is what this is, right? And then you output what is the most correct answer that is trained by the artificial intelligence. So this is generally how like ChatGPT works. It takes the knowledge that it has absorbed over the last 20 years, and then the data was actually provided by Google, if I'm not wrong. Was it provided by Google?
No, it's an open AI project lah. So basically, they are or they used to be open source. So
Yeah,
again, another company founded by Elon Musk, but he left as of 2 years ago, I think. But
yeah,
yeah, they were an open source project. I'm not sure if you remember this. I think gamers would remember this. If you play Dota 2, right?
yeah,
Um, OpenAI actually defeated one of the reigning champions one year.
yeah. I remember. For the meet 1v1, right?
Yeah, I think was it mid or was it like a 5v5 game? I can't remember really, but like
I'm not sure
yeah,
if they defeated 5v5. I'm pretty sure they defeated 1v1 in the mid lane. But then I think the player was the patch player. Is it Dandy? He defeated, I think, Dandy in the mid lane. Then basically, sorry, I'm totally nerding out right now. Then basically they realized that the way to defeat it is to basically feed in input. See, this is where like people are so worried about like AI taking your job, right? The way that they defeated AI, you know how? The casual players, you know how they found it out?
no, actually
You don't know, right? Okay, so if you play Dota or you play League of Legends, right, the way that they defeated AI, which is why the input out process output still cannot change no matter how advanced your AI is that the human, right, basically takes he creates a hero, he go to the mid lane and then he backed off or whack the tower. So this is how you defeat the AI because you cannot defeat the AI 1v1, so you play cheat lor.
yeah, but because because like backdooring is not part of the AI, not part of like the training data set, if that makes sense.
Yes, correct. So this is why I always like say that people are so scared of generative AI. As what Ryan mentioned, rightfully, shit in, shit out. So if let's say you know that you cannot defeat, find creative ways to defeat. And that is actually towards our next point, which is like I guess like like a lot of this like advancements in AI is very fascinating. The next thing that I guess we can talk about is like ethically, in AI, right? What does this mean for the future? Because as you guys would have known if you had read the news, right, there are certain prompts that ChatGPT does that doesn't actually output an answer. So, some like even for me, right? Let's say for example, write a complaint letter in a very angry tone to complain about something. The ChatGPT will not upload it. Do you know that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like there's like some sort of like restriction against violence, if that makes sense, in
Yeah,
ChatGPT.
yeah. So I tried that for fun, right? So it's like they will not do it. In fact, they are basically got an output, right? Basically say, oh, writing angry and complaint letters are not conducive to getting the result that you want. But here's an alternative in a very like what you call way,
More
in a
civilized
very
manner.
like more civilized, humane manner. So they give me the output. So that's just one example I can show lah. But obviously, if you go into things like, there are certain restrictions in the AI, which actually Ryan just now mentioned a very good point. When you design systems, right? If this happens, this will not happen. So I think there is some restriction that's inside AI. So I guess like I think one of the main concerns that people have, like what Google and the FANG media companies have over the last like 5 years, right, is that they're worried that tech companies become too powerful where they actually control the propaganda, and they also control the type of advertisement that can be run that influences people's decision. CNN, or CNBC, sorry, but so
You mean
so
CNBS?
CNBS, sorry. Yeah, but also, so basically they're very scared about like the ethics of like AI and what does this mean for the future lah. So what do you think, Ryan? Do you think that AI or artificial intelligence is on the way to become the Skynet, of the future, where they're going to influence our behaviors, influence the way that we do things, and basically end up destroying ourselves?
I think my main concern around this, right, is that AI will be too influential, and it will depend on like who is running the AI. Like let's say if some political party is controlling the AI, right, then it will become very politically skewed in that sense.
Yep.
Like and then again, like let's say if you start relying on ChatGPT for search, right? In the future, like maybe you're using Bing, right? Now Bing's a bit buggy, but one day maybe people it will replace Google search, and then people will start relying on ChatGPT for search, internet search, and then if ChatGPT decides to show you and not show you certain things, then your decisions and your views on things could change to become more skewed towards what the people behind ChatGPT wants. So this is one of the main concerns, and also again, if it's like ChatGPT, right? Like if you are using ChatGPT to censor certain things, it will become and everybody relies on ChatGPT for search again. It will become extremely easy to censor things. So it's a very powerful tool, but in essence, I feel like it's something that needs to be regulated. It's really funny, like how crypto, right, is so heavily regulated, but then AI, on the other hand, is not regulated at all. The risk that AI will pose on like all these important decisions, right, far outweigh what crypto can do in a lot of sense. Because crypto, in essence, is just money, right? And then again, maybe because it's money, it's easy to regulate. But for AI and the ethics around this, right, it's very difficult to draw a line, like say where you can or cannot do, because like let's say if don't censor certain things, like say now I'm pretty sure people are aware that ChatGPT doesn't comment on black people, doesn't comment on like white people, but then if you need information on it, like what happens, it becomes, and people who uses ChatGPT becomes trapped in like a walled garden like that. So it will affect learning and exploring in certain sense,
Yep. I've always felt that like when you talk about AI and ethics, right? I've always felt that, people who are inherently evil, okay, and prone to do crimes, will usually always find a roundabout way to get it done, right? And I don't think that will change even with the invention of AI, because generally I would agree that definitely what you expose people to on search will influence their decisions and behavior to a certain extent. And end of the day, you also do realize that these limitations are actually not imposed by the algorithm or the machine itself per se, right? Because end of the day, all these like limitations are actually imposed by the creator of ChatGPT, Correct. If I'm not wrong, I don't think this was a decision by the computer to say, oh, you can't do angry stuff. In fact, I'm pretty sure that this was actually created by the people who made the AI systems, right? This was a human
Yeah,
decision, right? This was a
yeah,
human
this is a
decision.
human decision.
Yeah, so if that was a human decisions, right, then obviously, the as what Ryan has, succinctly point out, is that you do run into issues of biasness, right? Because bias, if let's say they're trained on data sets, right, that is basically like not representative of the people they're supposed to serve, then obviously, you will be skewed towards one way of thinking. So that's why, like, there's this element of bias which I think you need to be very wary about when you use AI like ChatGPT. And the problem is that because this particular like model is very persuasive, right? You realize that when you use ChatGPT, the language that they use to reply you is very actually pretty persuasive. Like the way that they tell you, this is it. Then when you read, it also sounds true, right? When you sound true, then actually the problem is that because humans are generally lazy creatures, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't actually fact check what it tells you, right? You can be in this is also one way where you kena scam by what you see on Airbnb lah. You see the unit actually very nice, but actually when you really go and see and fact check, actually, how come this using like shit like that, right? So this is one way where you need to basically, right, like all things in life, even when you read news on Bloomberg, when you read news on like Twitter or the social media, same thing for ChatGPT. When you use it inside your work, you also need to make sure that before you actually take it as fact, you need to fact check, right? So basically this is where like the issues come lah. So basically you make sure you do fact check. Then also there's of course people are also concerned about privacy, right? Because if you collect a lot of data, there are sessions, right, where I remember there was an engineer who used to work at Microsoft, right? Then the back then now, when if you work for Microsoft, you were not allowed to use Google search.
Yeah,
Yeah, because they are
there was
worried
something.
that they were worried about like Google using the data of confidential. And in fact, if you realize, right, ChatGPT when it was launched, right, a lot of FANG companies, or even Amazon, told their employees not to input confidential and private documents into ChatGPT, right? Because right now, if you actually go to the premium paid version of ChatGPT, you don't use the free one, you use the paid one. You can actually input PDF documents inside the program, right? And it can give you an output, which is not available for the free version.
No, actually, you can do that. But it has to be on the internet. So, what you do is like you just copy the link and put it onto the Chat GPT.
Yeah, are you able to do it now for the free version?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So basically, like, so you guys have to be a bit like mindful because this does affect like privacy, right? Because end of the day, as what Marian has mentioned from the beginning, trash in, trash out. So when you put in information, it has to be good information before it becomes a very good output. Because what I realize is that another issue that they have are things like accountability.
Yes.
Because when you use the chat GPT, you realize that this particular person doesn't actually consider what is accountable when he gives you information. It just spits out information like no tomorrow. So there's one of the ways where ethically, right, it can be an issue lah. Because obviously, when we run the podcast, right, we definitely have accountability in mind. So, when we do investment ideas, especially we're talking about personal finance and money, right, we don't exactly just throw out whatever we think, because we have to be mindful that people might just take it at surface level without doing their research, right? So when we give out ideas, especially for this podcast, we don't do like, we are very mindful, like we don't like to talk about meme stocks. We don't like to talk about like stocks that are like super, just because it's hype we try to avoid them, and we try to focus on the fundamentals, right? So what's very, I think, a bit worrying is that when you use like computer to generate output, right, is that they don't actually take that into consideration, because I think we are still very far away from making sure that AI actually has that capacity to understand emotions.
Yeah, I agree. Because to the AI itself, right, whatever emotions are, it's just what we call sentiment analysis. So it's again sequence of like a library of words. Like say for stocks, right? You can have like bullish to the moon. Then that means maybe the stock is gonna go up. Or like or like people the general sentiment thinks that it's bullish, or like for emotions per se, you have things like happy, sad, or you have angry, you have I don't like it, I like it, so it's just like a library of things that if like you scan through the text with say like what again data scientists like to call text mining. You scan for these kind of words. So this is what ChatGPT does. It scans for these kinds of this kind of words, and then from there, right, it decides whether you are um, happy, angry, and then it deploys a different statistical model to reply you.
Yeah, so and that's the thing, right? Because like emotions are quite relative, right? Like a
Yes.
person who is happy, it can mean different types of output for many different people. Some people, if they're happy, they go and party. Some people like me who's a lazy bum, if I'm happy, I want to stay home and watch Big Bang Theory, right? So
Yes.
so these are very different like outcomes for like many different people lah. So I think I think if you realize when you use the AI, right, that actually does there is a difference in that human element is still not there yet, right? So that comes into like the issues that we face. But I think these are mostly limitations rather than issues at hand, because I think generally over time, I believe a lot of this will be solved. So, and if this is going to be solved, and here comes the next part, I think the rest of this podcast is going to be something which I think you guys will like, which is the practicality of how you use intelligence and AI. So the next question I would say is that how does AI affect your work and job, right? So for you, Ryan, let's use some real case scenarios. For you, how has AI improved your life significantly over the last 4 months?
Oh, I think like I really like this question because it's what you like to call execution questions, right? And this is what the
Yep.
podcast is all about, being staying relevant and investing in yourself and your portfolio for the future. But like in terms of like how did AI affect me for the last 4 months, right? Is I use it mainly for programming. I'm fluent in this language called Python, but then I'm not very good at C sharp. So C sharp is sometimes required in my work.
Mm.
And then traditionally or like before ChatGPT, right? What I do is like I write in Python and then I pass it to a colleague who's an actual programmer to
Yep.
to do the conversion.
Yeah. So basically translation lah.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you need
Yeah,
you
very,
need it in
very
Mandarin. You
glorified.
need it in Mandarin. So you need it in Mandarin. So you put English, then come out Chinese.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this is how ChatGPT where it's so powerful. It has kind of like accelerated my learning. Because
By
for
how
me to
much
transition,
quantitatively?
yeah,
Oh, you're getting into it.
like how much I would
Yeah.
say like in terms of like the project itself, like as a team, right? I reduced a lot of workload for my colleague because I don't need to write in I don't need to send him Python codes anymore, and he doesn't need to do the translation. I can just do it on C sharp. I can just do it on ChatGPT, convert from Python to C sharp, and then from there, right, I test my code and I try to debug a little, and then
Yep.
maybe it's 70% there already, and then I can pass it to my colleague already.
So you basically like do like 70% of the work, then you just ask him, hey, it's pretty much done. Can you just refine it?
Yeah, kind of like because like even if the code works right, maybe these programmers they have like for me to merge my code to their code, they still have to do some modifications because of like some maybe say like preference or whatever it's never 100% I can pass it to him and then he can plug and play. So
Uh,
like so it's like, but still if you consider this, right, it's like say maybe a good solid 50%. And again, like even if we stay inside just one computing language, right, like say for Python itself, right, the problem with like programming for me is understanding the syntax. I know exactly what to do. I
yep.
know I want to convert from A to B, right? And I
Yep.
and but the problem is I don't know what kind of model to use. So in Python, like I don't know which library to use sometimes. I don't know the syntax to convert from A to B. So which is syntax is the language for this programming languages lah. So what's the code that I need to type in, because it's relatively simple if you know the syntax, but converting from like say Python to C sharp or like Python to C sharp to Java, right? The biggest problem when I talk to actual programmers, right, they all tell me switching between languages is difficult because of the syntax. Nobody can remember the syntax 100%.
Yep.
So it's like you know a couple of languages. Like I myself, I know Chinese and I know English, but I cannot switch between the two 100% also.
So it's like
So
a translation issue lah.
yeah,
It's like if you spend your time, if you're a Japanese person, you live in Japan, right? Then you speak Japanese like 95% of the time. You ask him, hey, can you translate this into English? Ah, he's like, give me a
wakaranai.
moment. Wakaranai, wakanai, right?
すみません.
Yeah, sumimasen, wakanai, right? So it's similar lah. So like I realized that that's why they say that a lot of programmers they specialize in one particular language, right? Because that's how
Yes.
they rather like be a master of one than to be a jack of all trades in everything. Then they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to end up doing like nothing of value.
But now it's different. Now with ChatGPT, right? Because ChatGPT, the first few training data sets, it's trained on programming languages.
That explains a lot.
So yes, so it works incredibly well for this kind of like translations lah.
Yeah,
From like say Python to C sharp, and then like even if we talk about like just in a single programming language, like I can just ask like you won't know like which library or what kind of syntax you need to input all the time because you there's just too many libraries to remember, right? You
yep,
can't you can't remember like every keyword. So you can just ask ChatGPT, like say I work with what we call data frames a lot. So basically it's glorified Excel sheets. Sometimes you need to take like one column and you need to merge it with the other. You need to plus and minus sum or average, you need to calculate the rolling average. And you know all these things on top of your head as like statistical English words. But then
yep,
what you don't like for myself, I can't exactly remember all of them in the Python language. So I just asked ChatGPT, how do I concatenate two columns in pandas? And then it gives me a couple of a couple of methods that I can try. And then so this is how like what another way that ChatGPT has transformed my working. And then the last way which I found extremely impactful, right, is reading error messages.
yep,
So like in programming, a lot of people fail, right, because they don't read the warnings or the error messages. I would say like
yep,
close to 95% people don't do that lah.
yep,
It's a very common thing in programming in beginners. If you want to properly learn how to program, you must learn how to debug. And to debug, right, you have to spend a lot of time reading the error messages and the warning messages. And if you understand that, yeah. But like normally people tend to ignore. But now with ChatGPT, right, you don't need to ignore. You can just copy and paste into ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT will tell you what to do. You don't need to
yep,
think even.
yep,
It's insane. Yeah.
yep.
So it's like it really cuts down a lot of time on my
Process.
end.
You see the interesting thing, right, is that your input and your output didn't change. You still wanted the same output, right? Your input is pretty much the same, like you start off with the same prompt, but the thing that has revolutionized is the process. Instead
Yes.
of like going to like okay, so the typical way that programmers like to work, okay, I learned this in CS50, which by the way has now been rendered useless because of ChatGPT, because every single assignment now can just be done by ChatGPT. Okay, so
Yeah.
but it's fine. I took the course for 3 months. I enjoyed it. At least now I have a working knowledge of how computers work, so I'm able to like explain it to people who can't understand computer, right? So basically, like the input is that you just give out a few key criteria of limitations of what you want to get an output. Like so, for example, you say that okay lah. So for example, for me, right, let's say I want to write a letter to a customer, right, but I don't want to come up with like the entire like let's say it's an apology service recovery letter, right? Let's say I want to write a service recovery letter to a customer because due to these three factors, therefore we are not able to output. And can you then also like sometimes in order for you to write letters like this, that's very specialized, right? You need a lot of emotional energy to write, right? You need to be in the right state of mind. Then you need to think properly. So for me, right, to use it in a very layman way, right? Because sometimes writing these letters can take me about 15 to half an hour to write. Okay, because it's not easy to write lah. Okay, so the way I do it is I just go to ChatGPT and then I can just give them the input. Okay, write a very apologetic letter to a customer and a service recovery letter, right? With these three main criteria on why it happened and the way that we're going to solve it is these three criteria, right? So I just feed this input, right? And then you output me a letter, okay, which will take me about sometimes half an hour, sometimes even an hour to write because sometimes when you do like business dealings, right, you need to be very like careful about the way that you communicate with your customers, especially over text. So when it gives me this input, it's actually better than what I would have written myself,
Yeah,
right?
it's quite amazing. In the sense, like for this kind of like writing, because ChatGPT can write very well, right? It can also like summarize documents for you quite well. Say
Yeah.
like if you have like a PDF, right? Like just now what we mentioned, like say a website, lah,
Mm.
a web page. You just copy and paste the web page onto ChatGPT, and then you ask it to summarize in bullet form. It will give you like a bullet by bullet summary, and it doesn't miss the points.
Yeah, you see, last time in order for me to dissect an entire 10Q or 10K, it would take me at least like 6 to 8 hours, to really like dissect it. But now it's so much faster,
Yeah,
right?
they did it
Basically,
with the Tesla earnings.
yeah. So like, I think what is going to be even more powerful, right, is that if it ever reaches a level where it's able to quantify and spot glaring red flags inside a financial statement, right, then that is really subjective, right? Because this where what constitutes a red flag is quite subjective to each
Yes,
individual.
yes,
Because if let's say I'm a value investor, all right, and then the red flag to me is that this is an overpriced company, then obviously the issue with ChatGPT is that it's not able to recognize that because as we go back to ethics, we cannot really like dissect what is like the contextually, right, what it means by a red flag. So the way that we solve this is that we need to change the input. So when you write inside ChatGPT, right? So for example, you want to scan, let's say you want to scan the PDF document, right? Then let's say instead of summarizing, I say give me these red flags, and then you list down a checklist that you
yes.
created yourself.
The
Let's say
keywords
it's the
basically.
keywords of like red flags, that something that to the Enron scale, cash flow, blah blah blah. Then when you see the input has not changed, right? The input still needs to be creative because the idea of red flags, the word of the word red flag is not very much like is subjective lah, depending on what type of investor you are. Then when you key this in these limitations, which needs to be provided by a human, not a computer, because human the reasons why we're human, right, is because each of us have our own personalities, each of us have our own risk tolerance, each of us has our own like investor risk appetite. So this is subjective and personalized. So when you like personalize it, then ask them to output, then they will give you the output instead of just it being a very general like the output lah. So in this particular case, right, this really does affect your work and job in a way that is very positive, right? Because like
Yes.
imagine last time in order for you to like dissect an entire document, let's say for example, if I'm like studying for university, you think I want to read like 600 pages of like content. You think I can
Nah, man.
digest? Then I got like
Nah, man.
5 chapters. I have like 6 books of six. That's 3,600 pages. When I was studying back then for my CFA exams. Do you know that every single like level, right? They give you like 6 books, and each book is like 400 to 600 pages of information for you to read and dissect, and then you have to pass the exam like in 5 months.
Oh my god.
So can you? And then for me, the way that I passed it was very simple lah. I didn't really read the books. I'm not that crazy lah. I basically like took like third service providers. They have their notes, and then even for them, they also had like 200 pages for each subject, which you multiply is still about 1,200 pages to read, right? Then I further dissected it into flashcards, which is about 100 flashcards. So that's how the way I did my CFA. I basically took like a volume of 3,600 and I manually created 130 flashcards so that I can basically pass the exam. So basically, what the whole process, right, took me about 3 to 4 months to complete, which I know that given the technology today with ChatGPT, I can probably do it in less than 1 month. Then basically, it's up to me to just memorize everything,
Yes.
right? So basically, this is really like you talk about like process improvement, right? You're basically like instead of having as you as a programmer to manually go and as what they say, the 3-step process. First of all, as a programmer, you must learn, you must understand the basic understanding of how computer science work. The second thing you need to know how to do very well is you need to learn how to Google very well. Then after you Google very well, the next thing you need to learn is to know how to debug. Then after you debug, you also need to learn how to compile. So this is like a 3-step progress. So the thing is, right, the Google search right now has I think it comprises a huge bulk of a computer programmer's time because
Yes.
you need to know what to search for,
You
right?
end up with like 20, 30 tabs on your
Yeah, you end up with 20,
browser.
30 tabs of potential. But then the thing is that even if you search them, right, they are not real solutions because you still need to make sure that it fits your criteria, which is your input, right? So you want the output. So end of the day, what ChatGPT does is that it compares the 20 or 30 tabs for you and basically choose the solution which is the most viable one. Is that how it
Yes,
works?
yes.
Yeah. So basically, like instead of like looking for 20 across pages, right, and then even with your ad block, you still gonna cock block, by all these like even with your ad block, you still gonna cock block by all the advertisement and whatnot, asking you to pay like so much, right? Basically, ChatGPT does that like 20 text and compress it to one answer in less than how long? Less than 1 minute. So
Yeah.
that itself, right, already cuts down a few hours of your time. Then the next thing you need to know is just to learn how to debug and then you compile. And then that's why it cuts so much time. So it's the same thing like for me. Let's say I want to like write a letter or even to just to summarize some notes for my business. And even like for me, the way I use it right now is even for me, right, in the business, if let's say I want to do a job listing, right, it's going to take me a hell of a time, right, to do a job listing campaign with so many words. I basically just ask ChatGPT, can you write for me a job listing applicant filling these three criteria, so what we're looking for, and then what they need to do, and then he did it in less than 5 minutes, which otherwise would have taken me an hour to write. So it really like compresses it. And from what I understand, I think ChatGPT also passed the bar,
Not
passed
just the
medical
bar, there's like
school.
medical, yeah.
Medical school, the bar, he hasn't passed CFA, so I'm glad. But I think it's going to come lah. Sooner or later, it's going to come. Okay, it's going to kick our ass. So, but I think generally what it does show is that no matter how smart you are as a person, right, when it comes to pure raw power of computing and process things that which are very data heavy, things which take a lot of time to process, right, things which are like data sets which are data is going to be cut in terms of time, right? For you, that what would take you like 5 hours to do will now be compressed to less than 5 minutes,
Yeah, I think
right?
like there's a huge misconception when you mention like the AI passing the bar exam, the medical exam, and then people are like, oh, gonna take away your job. Actually, no. It's just gonna enhance your experience because like I'm a
The
lazy person.
bicycle,
I'm a lazy
the
person,
bicycle.
Yes, exactly. It makes traveling from A to B easier.
Yep,
And then what it does is like it makes your life easier. But in the end of the day, the person pulling the trigger on decisions is not the AI.
yep,
It will still be the doctor, or it will still be the pharmacist. It will still be the lawyer. But what ChatGPT can do is it can enhance the time for you to make the decision. What a lot of people don't understand, right, is that this ChatGPT it buys you a hell lot of time. A hell lot of time. My programming, like say not say for programming myself lah. Sometimes I spend hours on scouring like a caveman on Stack Overflow for answers. And now I just need to ask ChatGPT one question, and then ChatGPT gives me two or three options. I pick one or two. Sometimes I'm lucky the first one it works already, and then I start
yep,
debugging. And then I again with ChatGPT, I copy and paste the error, and then it tells me exactly what to do.
yep,
And then for reading documents and all this, you can just input like say a textbook, right? Say for students, like your CFA book, right? You input the book and you tell that condense it to a book, say of like say 100-hour reading time, and then it will generate like a wall of text
yep,
that's full of the main points that you need.
yep. I like your analogy of point A, point B. So generally, like you just need to use AI like a bicycle or a car. So you just imagine like you walk from point A to point B. Initially, you just use your 2 feet, right? But with AI, right, doing your process, you're using a car traveling from point A to point B. So a lot of people are very scared about staying relevant, right? Which is basically our next topic, the limitations of AI, how to stay relevant. I think what people need to realize is that you are still the person who still determines and decides where is point A and where is point B.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is basically another analogy to the input and output. You still have to decide as a person where is it that you want to start from point A and where is it that you want to start from point B. Because the process in the middle, right, is just made a lot easier for you. Because it's like if you want to walk like from Singapore to let's say Singapore, you want to walk to KL, you're crazy, right? Because the process to make it easier is you want to take an airplane or you can drive,
Yes.
right? So AI is the same thing. Instead of walking from point A to point B, you want to use AI to shorten your time taken to get to point B, right? So like a lot of people always like are very worried about staying relevant. I would say that you only need to worry about it if you are basically the person who's delivering the process in the middle. Basically, your job constitutes something that is very like easily replaceable. But if you are in the spectrum, where even within like when you say point A to point B, right? Let's say you're talking about a big picture production, right? Let's say you want to create a Marvel film, right? Even in that whole process of point A to point B, which is like the big idea, right? When you like go in and zoom in, you also realize that for each particular step, right, there is also a point A to point B for each particular step. Does that make sense? So it's like you have
Yep.
this big production movie you want to make. Then within this big production movie, they segregate into usually 3 production stages: the pre-production, the production, and the post-production. Then within the production itself, right? Let's say you have like a business that does like the visual effects team, who basically like you do VFX, right? Let's say you work in Lucasfilms, you do VFX, right? Industrial Light and Magic IM. Then IOM itself, even for the VFX division, there's also like stages that you go through that go from point A to point B. Then you pass it off to this micro like point A to point B, input output, right? Then end of the day, once the input goes from pre-production all the way to the final production, the release of the movie, right? Then you have an entire movie, right? So a lot of people, they worry that their job is going to be irrelevant, but I would say that from my experience, right, in every single job, right, I would say that it took us 70 years since the birth of the idea of a computer, the birth of like the computer, the first physical computer, right, up to today, right, it took us 70 years to get here. And I would say that your standard of living, right, generally has increased significantly, and now your standard of living has been a lot better since 70 years ago. And if the past is representative of the future, I would argue that in the next 100 years, as AI starts to become better, it starts to become very flourishing, what you realize is that the standard of living should generally increase over time, right? So because every job that you do, right, if processes get better, right, generally you will also get better in terms of time. And generally, when you have more free time, you're able to better create input the point A, point B a lot better, because we never go away from the fact that humans are still the ones choosing where is point A, where is point B.
Yeah, in the end of the day, you must remember the person who's pulling the trigger is you yourself.
Yeah.
So the question of like staying relevant is whether you adopt AI or not in your work, and how you can adopt AI.
Yeah. So I think in this particular case, right, when people are very worried about like staying relevant, all I can say is, I've never been in, I guess, in a place where I am ever irrelevant. I will say that what actually happens is that the processes that I use to do becomes irrelevant. But the output, generally, right, people want what they want. No matter how much you can change, like let's say the processes of the car, get the car to EV, get the what to whatever, right? End of the day, people still want the output, the outcome desired, the desired outcome. The only question they have is how can I get there faster?
Yeah.
Right? Does that make sense? So end of the day, if you are basically doing a service, business or a job or doing a product, right, which creates a desired output for other people, I don't think you really need to worry about relevance, because generally what this actually happens is that you will start to realize that this actually makes your job a lot easier. And it's up to you, as what Ryan said, whether or not you want to adopt it, which I think both of us definitely raise our hand now. I want to adopt. Why you don't want? It's like, walao, it's like who the hell still walks to like from Singapore to KL? That is like don't know how many thousands of donkey years ago, right? Like even like apart from the customs lah, but apart from the customs rate lah. But I would say that obviously, we'll take a car or a plane to like if you can get there faster in less time, and then you don't have to drain so much of your energy, why don't you want to take the faster road, right? So especially like I would say that our podcast listeners, the bulk of you are between your 20s to your like late 30s, right? I would say that learn how to use it, because I think end of the day, the limitations of ChatGPT is really actually, even though we talk about the ethics, right, it's really dependent on you as the user, because end of the day, the output is only as useful as what you feed it, because you can be very, very specific, you can be very, very creative as to what you want it to do. Like for me, for example, to test the creativity, you know what I input? Write me an entire movie script of James Bond trying to escape from a Singapore hawker center. And he actually started writing it, so that was very funny. So like the creativity aspect itself is still depending on the point A lah. You decide where is it that you want to start from point A, right? Then basically it just does the work for you lah, which is so pretty amazing lah. So I think end of the day, right? the people who stay irrelevant tend to be people who don't embrace change.
Yes,
Okay, so if there is a better way to do it, a faster way to do it, I think people who are listening to podcasts embrace it for what it can be rather than be scared of what it can do. Because either way, if you don't embrace it, then someone else will lah. So you might as well just hop onto it when right now it's actually very easy to use. Correct.
exactly. And
Yeah.
I think
So right.
like that's a hot take, like, like
Yeah.
companies that don't really adopt this kind of AI, they will be gone in the next 10 years.
It's like a company
Generally,
who doesn't want to go, don't want to do what you call that, work from home, right? They still die want their employees to stay, come to office, right?
yeah, it's just how would I put it? The time that these generative AI buys for humans, it's invaluable. I'm not sure about like other fields, but for me, I personally I felt my efficiency going up by at least 40%. And if
Yep.
I can free up 40% of my time, right, I can work on other things. That's a lot of time for me. And
Yeah, you're earning
and,
40%
and
more, actually.
yeah, exactly. I can earn from an employer's perspective, right? Your employees' productivity can go up by 40% if they are in the, say, like in my field, we everything we do contributes to progression on the project. Then if like AI can buy you time or accelerate your progress, right? And some more is for free, companies that don't adopt AI, they're gonna be left in the dust. And then again,
Yeah.
like say for back to the employees again, right? If like you don't learn how to adopt AI, you go to and you want to upgrade yourself from like a company A to company B, and company B uses AI, and you're like, oh, you don't use AI, okay, we don't want to hire you anymore, So just be open-minded and learn, man. I think this is in the next decade, alongside with EV, crypto, artificial intelligence will be one of the largest wave of change that's going to happen. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, put it this way, I actually just conducted like a short session on how to use ChatGPT, like I think sometime last week, right? And then I'm like giving it to people who are not super tech savvy, right? And then within 2 minutes of demonstrating what it can do, right, I already see the eye light up already, right? So that tells you something, that if within 2 minutes I can get people who are not super tech savvy for their eyes to light up, it kind of shows you, right, that it's actually very easy to use and very intuitive. And the reason why the eyes light up is because immediately, that's why we are humans. I can immediately see right in their head, right, the creativity things start working already because they are already thinking about possibilities and what they can use it for. Correct. So as what we say, we've been saying, I would say the tech works. So use it. And then anyway, it's free lah. It's not going to cost you guys anything, so might as well just use it. When it's free, right? It's not like it's going to cost you a huge amount of like money to use it. In fact, it's zero. It's just going to cost you time. So like use it, learn how to like. There are many tutorials I think on YouTube right now which allows you to like teaches you what are some creative ways to use it and then expand on it. And then from there, I think basically for me, I use it almost on a daily basis now for myself, right? And I have very similar findings in terms of time savings. I also do save about 40% of my time doing a lot of work in my area lah. So definitely, I'm also a very huge like believer in AI, and I definitely embrace it for future work because I think now I think about all the number of hours I wasted reading all these fucking annual reports, right? Also a big check.
Yeah, like learning, like not just working on stuff or like you know creating content or whatever, but like you can use AI to learn as well. When I look back,
Yeah.
like how I learned Python, I felt like a caveman. I had to pay for like what do you call this, Coursera, and then I had to Google. I had to watch countless hours of YouTube videos, and then when I start, I had no idea how to install all the shit. Like, if you, I cannot believe I spent at least like a week figuring out how to install Python and work
Yep.
on Python. And now if I ask ChatGPT, right, it can be solved instantly. It tells me I need to do this, need to do that, and then you just go on accordingly to what they recommend, what this ChatGPT recommends.
Yeah. And that actually brings us to our next topic, which is the exciting one, which I really love, and that is the future of AI and how do you future proof yourself. So what do you think, Ryan? Right now we are really in the precipice, of territory, right, where it's so amazing. What do you think is going to happen in the future? And how do you future proof yourself?
Well, I cannot imagine what AI can be in the future because the potential is quite limitless in a lot of sense. But in one way that I can see is the Tesla AI bot lah. Because like let's say if the whole point about AI is to mimic human behavior, right? So it can be on certain processes. So it's more specialized towards say like sorting algorithms. It sorts from like A to from largest to smallest. So that's a human task that nobody likes to do, you know. And then AI makes it a lot easier. And then like again, what AI the Tesla bot right is trying to do is to mimic human behaviors mechanically. So you have the bot, and then the bot can do whatever humans can do physically. Say like run, and if it gets to the point that it can be damn good, right? It can cook for you. It can do a lot of shit for you, and then in the end of the day, to me lah, it saves time. All this AI, it helps you to it buys time for you to do things, for you to do things faster, for you to do things simultaneously, in conjunction with something else. And then to future proof yourself with all these changes, right, is to adopt it, be an early adopter, pay attention to how things are developing, and then change alongside the technological advancements. Be open-minded. That's the most important thing because um, I do see a lot of people resisting AI. Like from my field, right? I'm kind of like I'm not in the engineering field per se, but then I work with a lot of engineers. And then I'm not sure in other how the situation is in other countries, but in Malaysia, engineers are quite resistant to change. They want to comply to certain standards, and then some standards don't make sense. Some they're just there because it's part of the regulations, which I understand. But then again, the process of making things happen is very rigid. So they're not flexible, not open-minded. When I say certain things can be done using machine learning, some are amazed, and then they realize just how much pain that we saved. And then but then again, sometimes all this AI machine learning, they're not perfect. You have to accept a certain level of error tolerance. You have to accept some statistical errors, which are certain applications. Yes, you can accept, certain you can't. Then of course we won't recommend AI or like machine learning if the error tolerance is high. But if you resist, let's not just say AI lah. I've been working on implementing machine learning in my work, and I've gotten considerable amount of resistance, not just from the people the people who use my end product, but also people within the team,
That's
colleagues.
interesting.
Yeah, but then it sparks a lot of conflict, But then what I think most people don't understand about AI, machine learning, and all this, right, is that it buys you time, it buys you insight, and especially in the line of consulting, right? These are the two things you are selling to your clients. Like because I'm from the consulting line, for water specifically. So what I sell are predictions, and if you are selling predictions, doesn't matter if you are doing like a financial consulting, or you're doing supply line consulting, or IT consulting, or whatever. What you are selling as a consultant is a prediction. Number one, you have to understand, it's a prediction. And number two, your price that you can charge your client is highly dependent on how accurate your predictions are. So in essence, right, as a consultant, what you're selling is in essence time, because when you predict something, you're letting the client know in X amount of time, this shit's gonna happen. And you have to be ready for it. And that's the beauty of AI because it accelerates this process. Because like say in traditional engineering, you have to use certain certain things that doesn't account for change, like climate change, certain things that certain methods that are not dynamic enough, you know. And then if you base your predictions off of like static equations, things like that, right? Your prediction is going to be far off, no matter what you do. Because like say versus AI, right? You just use a linear equation. You can do that in Excel, right? And
Yep.
then you can do that using spreadsheets. But then it doesn't account for changes over time. It doesn't account for emergencies or like outliers. Because again, if you are human dealing with all this data, there are like millions of data points. You're bound to miss some of them. Your Excel can't even handle so many rows,
Yep.
and you're gonna make mistakes. But like with AI or machine learning and programming, they don't make mistakes. The mistake is is whether you put rubbish in or rubbish out only, and you get rubbish out only. That's where the mistake happens. So like to truly future proof yourself, just don't be stubborn. Embrace the change, and then think how you can apply AI onto your job. Because in the end of the day, it's not going to replace you. Like say people say like doctors gonna lose their job, lawyers gonna lose their job, but in the end of the day, it's still the lawyer who signs off the contract, still the doctor that holds the scalpel. All these tools are you need to have like this mindset shift to understand that AI is a tool. It's a very highly sophisticated tool, and you need to rise up to the occasion to become a super user to use it. Which is like what Aaron just mentioned. The better your prompt in your ChatGPT is, right? Say like the better your description of what you want ChatGPT to do, the better the output becomes. Rubbish in, rubbish out. Remember that. So that is fundamentally one of the most important things when using AI. So you have to gear yourself to be able to use it well, and that's how I think you future proof yourself.
Yep, I like that analogy because it's the same as like you can give a person a car, but if the person doesn't know how to drive, then it's as good as useless.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So you're just gonna crash and burn. Right. So it's the same thing, lah. It's like just think of it as an airplane, right? Then if you don't know how to use it, then you're just gonna kill people along the way. So um and I like the part where you actually describe like how we're going from contextual, which is basically like text delivery, into something which is more physical in the world, which is very, very much correct of how the way I see like the future of AI. Because immediately you realize that the reason why ChatGPT actually really takes off very much, right, is because I think a lot of us right now are in knowledge-based jobs, right? And what I mean by knowledge-based jobs is that the input from the customer, the prompt is that they have a question, and because we are the expert processor, all right, we create a solution based on our experience, and we give them the desired output, which is advice or consultations, right? So in this particular case, this flow of information, right? The process basically is done a lot faster, and that's the reason why it's taking off. Because a lot of jobs, I can argue, it's actually knowledge based jobs, right?
Yes.
You are selling knowledge, you are selling the know-how, you are selling like as what Ryan has actually put it correctly, you are selling time. Basically, the reason why you are paid maybe like a person who's paid 6,000 versus a person who's paid $30,000, right? The difference in this income is because the person who can earn 30K is potentially a person because he's able to save a lot of time for the company or the business, correct? So generally, what I've learned while doing business I guess in my career, what I've learned in business, right, is that people will be very willing, right? What people will always pay for is that people will pay to save time. This is
Yes.
really like the essence of everything. What people are really buying for, as what's that the person's name? The economics, the something Smith. I can't remember offhand what is his name. It's definitely not Joseph Smith. That's the Mormon. It's Adam Smith. Yeah. So what Adam Smith succinctly put it in words, right, is two things. Generally, his grand theory of economics is that people will always pay for two things no matter what. The first thing that they'll pay for is human labor, right? No matter what, they will pay for human labor because human labor, if you think about it, is just time,
Yeah.
right? You will pay for it because you will save your own time. So that's something that people are willing to pay for. The second thing that people are willing to pay for is land. So he dissects like the whole economic system or financial system into just two particular points. Time, basically human labor as well as land. So the definition of labor, I would say over time will change because last time it used to be very manual labor. Right, you want to create a Henry Ford car, you need a lot of manual labor lah. But right now, the manual labor has basically gone into like learning how to create systems and basically like programming robots to do the work faster and more accurate than what a human can do. So the definition of labor does change over time. And that is basically like what you think about the future of AI is going to happen because immediately when you use ChatGPT, you realize that they're a lot better than basically a lot of this, like what Ryan has mentioned, like a lot of error, right? They're actually much faster at determining how to solve your problem than a human will do in a call center.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, because you don't have to, hi, this is blah blah blah. Press one for English, press two for Mandarin, press and hold if you cannot speak any other language. Right, that's the first cock block you get. The second cock block you get, if you have an issue with your transaction, press one. If you have this issue, press two. If you that issue, press three. By the time you get to the actual human operator, it's going to take you 10 minutes. Or if not, or worse, or you drop out of the call, then you have to redo the whole damn thing again. Right,
Yeah,
when
if you
actually
press
all
the
you
wrong
really
button.
want, right? Yeah, like, and actually what you really want is just to get an answer now. And ChatGPT does that, right? Because the most annoying thing is when you call a call center, right? Is that even if you get to the human, the person tells you, "Oh, sorry, I'm not actually the expert. You pressed wrongly. Can you restart?" Well, fucking hell, you waste like 10 to 15 minutes of your time, right? So, what I realized is that in the future, I would say that we will probably see increased personalization of services, right? Basically, instead of like hiring humans to do like a lot of this like FAQ, right? I think the AI chat will basically help people like do a lot of their personal questions, which can be done quite fast. So things like maybe you need some prescription medication, right? Then you have data from the Singapore MOH. They're trying to consolidate all the medical history and data into one service. All right, that is already happening. By the way, MOH is doing that, and then basically, they can run this data through the ChatGPT or whatever chat service AI. Right, then when you have a particular issue, you can just ask them. Then they can give you an instantaneous response, much faster than what a doctor can. And then you just imagine if they give you the prescription. Then the second question they ask you, would you like this medication at this cost to be delivered to your house or your home? You just click the answer yes. Then they'll send this in prescription and medication into another server in the fulfilling center that is basically done by a robot, and then the robot will be basically the fulfillment center. You take this pills, take that pill, consolidate, put it inside a packing machine. The packing machine goes into the delivery service provider. Delivery service provider immediately takes it. In future, right, in 10 years, maybe they, instead of putting a person, maybe they go use drone, and the drone delivers it straight to your house.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So
You
that
don't
is
even need
really
to
like,
go and see the doctor now.
yeah, and that is really happening, right? And because like even for me, right, when I see the doctor for a very particular ailment, I don't actually go to the doctor. I just use teledoctor. I use teledoc. So basically, I use telecommunication through Zoom through a doctor for him to basically just prescribe medication in Singapore. So I don't even, because I'm not going to go to the doctor and waste 2 hours for something I know I already have, right?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't need to
Exactly.
stand 2 hours in line for a doctor to tell me I have let's say I have allergies. I already know I have allergies. I say it's not my first fucking time getting allergy medication. I don't have to wait in line for 2 hours just to get the diagnosis, right? I already pretty much know. And I don't have any medical history. And I don't want to waste my time like waiting in line. I say, for what? I say, everyone is wasting the time. So especially at my age, you think what like age of 60, unless I know I'm like bleeding from my nose like 24/7, then obviously I'll go to hospital lah. But in this particular case, you have allergies, I need medication, right? I'll just get a doctor, teledoc, get it done. And then basically the input I want is that I need confirmation that I have it. And then output I want is basically I just want medication, that's it, right? So why is it that I need to waste 2 hours on the process or getting something that can be done in less than 3 minutes?
Yeah, that's the thing. I kind of like discussed this on Twitter a while ago. I was like thinking general practitioner doctors are so the kind of doctors you see in the clinic lah. Like what you mentioned. A lot of people like youngsters nowadays. We all understand the kind of medication we want. If it's a fever, is it viral? Is it bacterial? If it's bacterial, maybe then you need to have an antibiotic. If it's just viral, it's just Panadol. If it's flu, I need antihistamine. allergies, antihistamine, right? And then if I need painkillers, I need this, I need that, I people nowadays have like a basic understanding of like what we need, and the main point of like all this doctors, right, is like they are good at diagnosing. But then,
Confirmation, no?
but then if it happens enough, like you experience it more than a couple of times, you would know like, oh, I have a running nose, oh, I have a flu, then I need a like whatever pill, like antihistamine or whatever, and then I just walk to the pharmacy to get over the counter medicine, and I don't even have to go and see the doctor, because and then I eat my medication and go to sleep, wake up fresh tomorrow, and then now this chat GPT can give you this confirmation. It replaces, like, not to say replace, like, it speeds up the confirmation process, and I feel like it will cut away like some efficiencies in the medical industry.
Yeah. Put it this way, guys. You think your doctor don't use Google search?
Yeah, WebMD calling you
They
out.
should. I tell you, they should use Google search one, alright? Like I don't like it happened before that I think I was in a situation, right, where I was able to diagnose something faster than actual doctor, right? And I had no medical training just by using Google search.
I mean, the doctors will be angry from me saying, for us saying this,
Are you
but then,
medically
like,
trained?
are you
That's
medically
their
trained? Later you administer something wrong, how? I'm like,
yeah. No lah, but
but
I
then if
think
you
they have
experience
a
like enough already,
yeah, but
then
they
it's
have
like,
like a valid concern, right? Because sometimes they're also worried, and this is where the ethics come in lah, because they're worried about whether or not there's any side effect for family history, whether or not you have like a combination of medication which can be lethal, because these type of things do happen, and when they happen, obviously everybody's like, hey, how come you never tell me lah, then the doctor has to. So the reason why we still have doctors for GPs, because they are, legally liable for any misdiagnosis lah, they can be punished, and therefore there's a they are liable for incorrect diagnosis, and and they are held accountable. So this is where the accountability come in, which ChatGPT doesn't have, right? Which is basically one of the topics we talk about in terms of like AI, and that is the accountability, right? Is why we still have doctors today, because they need to be responsible for like giving the correct medication, correct diagnosis, and also need to be aware that if you take a certain medication, it cannot conflict with each other. Yeah, so that is one of the ways that like the future of AI, right, is I think what is going to happen is that you need to be more specialized than being a general practitioner.
yeah, exactly. Specialization will be required.
Yeah, so your level of like processing needs to be higher than what the baseline is, because if your processing, right, is basically just something that can be generalized by, let's say, a chat like the AI, right, then generally people will not want to pay you, because they can get it for free.
They like, if like, say, the difference between a pharmacist and a general practitioner is always quite blurry, yeah, in my sense, in Malaysia at least, because like pharmacists, they can also, they based on your symptoms, they can also give you medication, and in
Yep.
Malaysia, right, it's a bit uncommon in internationally, right, but then doctors also prescribe medication, and so the roles are kind of like overlap. But then now I feel, with ChatGPT and everything, like pharmacists can also like kind of like rise up. They use ChatGPT, and then they confirm the symptoms, and then they know exactly, like, they confirm the diagnosis, and then they can just straight away prescribe better medication, cheaper medication, faster to you, over the counter. Then you don't have to stand in line and wait while you shiver in the clinic and all that.
And I always go back to the main reason why GP still exists, because all of us need MC. That's why. Okay, put it this way. Okay, put it bluntly. The reason why we all wait 2 hours in line is because we don't want to show up at work for 8 hours. So we save us. Basically, it goes back to the nature, right? We save time, right?
Yes.
Right, because every single company, if you want to take off for the day because you're ill, you need a certified MC, and that's why doctors are still in business. Because I think, apart from like obviously their main business, which is to make sure that of course they have patients who come in, and of course they do things like making sure, like, if you take high blood medication, you're on high cholesterol, right? They need to monitor your health to ensure that the medication doesn't have any like side effects. So I think a bulk of the medication that they dispense, it's not just, you see happily those people with flu need MC, they go. No, a lot of these GP, the reason why they still exist, right, is because they do have quite a number of consistent patients that come to them almost every month, right, to make sure that the medication that they're taking does not have very serious side effects, because they do measure that. And that is something which cannot be replicated by AI, because you want to do a blood test, AI is not going to be able to do it for you,
Yeah,
right?
like
They're not
say
going to put a needle
needles or
inside you.
anything, right?
Yeah, anything with needles, anything with urine, anything that needs to be sampled, right? Basically, the
invasive lah.
biological, invasive medicine, right? It needs to be done. And the reason why GP exists is because they're cheaper than hospitals. They're more convenient than hospitals, right? So that's why, they still exist. Lah. So apart from just the general diagnostic, which you mentioned, a lot of the GP's job, a lot of them, they also do have quite a number of patients that visit them because they have the medical history of the patient, and they also do need to do like invasive medical tests to ensure that if they're on that medication, they don't have any like red flags.
But like what you mentioned, the specialization needs to be, the skill cap needs to be will become higher towards the future already, because like a lot of these problems are like, say like the common flu, right? I'd say like it's more than 50% of the GPs were, maybe even more than 60-70%.
I can't confirm that because I don't run a medical clinic, but I would say that what's going to happen is that it's actually better for everyone, because what's going to happen is that the queues to the doctors will be cut. Generally, that's what I
Yes.
think. Like the future, basically what happens is that maybe instead of taking 1 hour, it can be as fast as 10 minutes, because only people who very like serious ailments and people who really need like consistent medical care will be going to a doctor quite frequently to get their test done. Yeah, so
Yeah.
in a way, right, overall, I think everyone benefits lah. Because even if let's say because based on my experience doing like Zoom telecommunication, I think it's also better for the doctor that I don't go to his clinic and clog up the lines, because the entire process for me to get a medication was only less than 3 minutes.
Oh, that was fast, man. That's fast.
Yeah, so it's also better for a doctor because it's like the doctor knows what I want, and then he basically just confirms that basically I have history. Then his main question now, do you have any history of medical history, any like drug allergies? These are things that he asks for, he looks out for. No, then prescribe, because basically in his head, right, he's computing, okay, the chance of any lethal dosage is less than is almost non-existent. Then he therefore can go ahead and prescribe. Now, of course, you also give me MC lah, which is what I need lah. So yeah, so I think, and also it's better for him because in terms of time, in terms of charges, right, it's still the same as like if I go to him in person. So obviously the volume of cases he can do in 3 minutes, he can see 20 patients. Then assuming let's say each patient he can charge $50, right? I see in terms for him, money in is a lot better, what? So it means his square footage for the clinic is not that high. He can actually reduce his clinic size and only see patients who really need to see a doctor. And then basically he's still while he's seeing patients, let's say there's no patients, he can do it anywhere. He can basically see anyone around Singapore. So actually, in terms of economics, right, you talk about AI. I think what happens is that we are really seeing like technology helping the doctors to basically like operate their clinics that used to be restricted by location and geography. Right now, they can actually run a clinic, right, where the location might not be super good, but because now they have technology, and then with I think what's going to happen is that with the AI and the prompting, it's just going to make it even easier for us to in terms of the processing of a medical diagnosis lah. So I think end of the day, I like to believe in the good in humanity. Okay, I always think that even though people always like every time you listen to the CNDS, they always tell you the world is dying, but I've seen that over like 15 years. What I generally realize is that over time, right, when it comes to crunch time, when we have to make a decision, right, people generally always choose the route, right, where our lives get better. It's very rare, right, where like, unless the person is very self-destructive and selfish, right, where he wants the whole world to go down with him. So generally, people are in their very selfish manner. They will always choose what is right and better for people around them. So generally, like if you ask about the future of AI, my thinking is that I think for the past 70 years, we have demonstrated, the fact that with the invent of computers and with the invent of technology, we have always progressed to, better standards of living, and better like, access to items
Services
for
and
services. It has always been better. No one ever starts a company. I'm going to make things worse. No one does that, right? Except from
yeah.
up north. But I think generally as a whole, people when they start a company or a business, it always comes back. No matter what business or product or service you create, it always comes back to the heart of entrepreneurism is that when you start a business or when you start a company that provides a service or product, no one ever starts a company saying, I'm going to make this product worse.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
going to make this
always
service worse.
better,
It is
faster, and cheaper.
yeah, it's always as what we go back to our many episodes, right? It's either better, it's either faster, or it's cheaper, right? So it's the same for the future of AI and how to future proof yourself. If you are always consistently thinking how to do better and then you do like incremental improvements, and then sometimes a revolutionary technology like a computer, or in this particular case AI comes, right, where the faster, better, and cheaper is clearly there because it fits all three. By the way, it's faster, it's better, it's cheaper. Then obviously the way to future proof yourself is just to adopt it, right?
Yep.
right? Because it's clear because it's not it's faster. You know, is it better? Yes. You know, is it cheaper? It's fucking hell. The cost is zero. So obviously it's cheaper lah. So like obviously you want to future proof yourself. Then you learn how to use it lor. I mean, why would you want to walk like from Singapore to KL and can take the plane? It doesn't make any sense, right? Right.
Exactly.
So coming to our next point, which is how the world will change. Um, my thing, apart from the discussions that we had, is that I just feel in the overall overreaching. This might be too generalized. Is that I think the world will change for the better, because I'm very optimistic that I think that people will be able to finally use AI on a retail level. Because for the longest time, right, artificial intelligence has always been limited by cost, right? Because
Yeah.
if I'm not wrong, I think the cost are to basically like teach the ChatGPT to do up this thing. I'm not sure I read it somewhere, whether or not was it like $2 million or $450,000, which is actually quite accessible to quite a number of people. So I think because, and then we follow Moore's law, right? Every single year there's a doubling in terms of like transistors, in terms of how much you can squeeze inside the thing, right? It means that computing power, guys, is going to almost, okay, let's say I don't take double, let's say I say 50% now. Even if computing power, right, increases by 50% on a year-on-year basis, wow, it means we're close to doubling every 2 years, So imagine right now, your ChatGPT can only do this. I say in 2 years, this thing is going to be obsolete, Your ChatGPT is going to be obsolete in 2 years because the next generation of ChatGPT is going to be double the computational power. Then on top of that, then after like another 3 years, it's going to double one more time. So it means like in the next like 10 years and the next decade, you're going to look the computing power. Right now, people already think it's damn good already. All right. It's and only been like less than like how many years? It's
Couple
like about
months.
like 4 months.
Yeah.
Right. It's going to be even more powerful, I think, in the next like few years. So personally, I'm very optimistic because as the computational power becomes more and more accessible to retail people, where right now even your Mac Mini can run 8K videos for less than $1,000, it kind of tells me that the applications this is going to go mainstream, like what the World Wide Web did for computing. The computers didn't really go mainstream until the World Wide Web came, and the information of the world, right, started to open doors where people right now they can learn. Like for me, right, I didn't learn all these marketing funnels, right, when I did the business. All these marketing funnels, right, I didn't learn it when I was in degree. It took me about 1 month to set up all the marketing funnels, and right now within a short time span of 2 months, I'm quite familiar with how to use the marketing funnels. I know how to do all these things. Right? It took me about 2 months. If I were back then 10 years ago, right, when I didn't have all this access to information, it would have taken me at least right about 1 year to 2 years to understand how to do this.
Yeah.
And that is the power. That you ask me how the future will change. I think in terms of like knowledge acquisition, it's just going to make everyone's life a lot better. So how about you, Ryan? What do you think?
No, aside from knowledge acquisition, like you mentioned, right, I think it's gonna accelerate, and then it definitely will affect education systems because students will be able to have access to ChatGPT, and they will learn better, faster, and
I just
cheaper.
think that the schools just need to embrace it, lah. Fuck it, right?
Yeah,
Like you
yeah.
talk
Like
about, I think like really the schools just need to embrace that this thing is going to stay, all right, and then learn how to adapt to create better content.
instead of like fighting it, then you create like
There's no
I mean
point
like
fighting it.
yeah,
Really, there's no
exactly.
point.
Like then they say it's gonna take teachers' job away. Then who's gonna mark your papers? Who's gonna mark your essays? Still teachers, what? But then but aside from like knowledge acquisition, which I think it definitely whether people like it or not, all this generative AI will become a tool that people rely. I think like because like what you mentioned just now, it struck a chord with me. Like all this AI, right, for the last decade, it has been only accessible by institutions with a lot of computing power and money, right? So a lot of things like all these like so-called controversial technologies that AI has created, like facial recognition or like like all this generative AI, it does like kind of like influence people's views and more importantly your cyber security. Like say if you have like with facial recognition, right, you have your iPhone knows your face, right, and then if you get hacked, then your iPhone gone already, because it will have like the data on your face scan, so it can access your phone anytime it likes. And that's why I feel like in this sense, right, like alongside AI, a lot of other technologies like blockchain again, like EV and everything, it will progress together. AI will accelerate a lot of these technologies. Like say
Yep.
say facial recognition, right? If you secure the blockchain, then you don't need to worry about your identity being hacked, because like nowadays on the Ethereum network, right? um there's also this thing called your soulbound token. So I believe like in the future, all this kind of like soulbound tokens, like it will contain all your sensitive information, like your passport number, your even your whole damn passport will be inside the blockchain, and then cyber security will become very important in this sense. And if like let's say that's why, like if like let's say you use AI for your facial recognition and everything, and again, like what Aaron mentioned, people who want to do bad things will find a way to do bad things. So like cryptography is perhaps a way to kind of like secure your soulbound tokens on the blockchain. And yeah, it enforces my belief in the singularity. Like, it means like a process where all the technologies, it will cross paths and come together to become something amazing, and then like the improvements will be leaps and bounds to what we cannot imagine today, and I think that will happen more and more frequently in the future as all the technologies develop.
Yep, I agree. I mean the I think the biggest reason why people who have used ChatGPT are amazed, right? I think it's because no one would have imagined that you would have such a good working prototype today, because no
Yeah,
one could have imagined it last year. And if no one could have imagined it this year and becomes a reality, right? I would say the next level, of generative AI, it's going to be something, right, that people cannot also imagine right now. That's my take.
yeah,
Because none of us were talking about AI like as of like 3 or 4 months ago, since the beginning, right? None of us thought about it. And then right now it's becoming mainstream. All right. So it means, right, the next iteration. This is only iteration one, by the way, guys. Like the iPhone, when it came, it was shit. Right, it took them 4 iterations before it became a proof of scale. Right now, we are at the stage of proof of concept,
concept.
right?
Yes.
We are still on the conceptual space. So, and in at concept, it's already 100 million users already. All right. Can you imagine what it's going to be like in 5 years, right, where it becomes proof of scale?
Yeah,
Imagine
when it becomes mainstream.
imagine all your FANG companies, imagine all your companies are using this power, right, to basically like disrupt the processes that you all have that is very menial, that you all don't want to do. You all don't like to do a lot of Google. You all don't like to be cock blocked by 20 tabs. All these type of things, right, is going to be changing the way that the world is going to operate, right? So that's why I feel like when you ask me how the world is going to change, I just think that it's going to be better lah. So,
Yeah.
and on this particular line, that brings us to our next topic, because after all, we are an investment podcast, right? Personal finance podcast. And this is something which I also love, which is, Ryan, how does this impact your investment?
Oh, I wrote this article about like investing, like for the future, like what Kathy would always like to say, like, to invest in for the future is to invest in it,
Yep.
so like there are some core technologies that I feel alongside AI that could impact the world, and you want to be on these trends. So specifically for AI, I think like and then this is not financial advice, or this is not a advertisement for my stock, but I hold a position in Palantir, just to be clear, to disclose,
Same.
you know
Yep.
and I think like these AI softwares will be the thing that will be, how would I put it, like accelerate business. It will become like, because like say all this AI, right, like say ChatGPT, right, it makes a lot of things easy and fast for you. A couple of months ago, when I tried to explain Palantir to people, right, it's difficult, but now it's not so difficult, because you imagine every function in the Palantir software, right, is specialized, is a specialized chat GPT to do something.
Yep.
So like they have like certain algorithms or certain AI. So that's why they call themselves or like, not they call themselves, but people call them AI softwares. Because they have like very highly complex AI like or highly complex algorithms to process your data. And what Palantir is, right, is what Palantir is has against its competitors, right, is the flexibility, because and also the data advantage. Because like what we mentioned, the rubbish in the model, rubbish out, and Palantir has advanced access to that even Google doesn't have, mind you, that even Google doesn't have. They have this kind of advanced access. It's called IL6 lah. I think Google's on IL5, if I'm not mistaken. And then it's a database where it contains a lot of sensitive information, where the Pentagon will give you access to, and Palantir has this special access. And then if you feed their models, well, like they feed their models with like more advanced, highly more refined and impactful data, right? Their model is going to produce better, highly better predictions. And that's why in the AI race, right, data is, I believe, like, is key, because no matter how many computers you throw at it, right,
Yep.
unless like someone is genius enough to come up with like a statistical model that can achieve lower error rates with shittier data, because it does happen, it does happen. And then they have like some sort of like corrective or like data screening algorithm. It does happen, some people who are geniuses, they do produce this kind of like algorithms, but it's rare. At its core, you need the best kind of data, even with like corrective algorithms on data, right? Or like better sorting algorithms or categorizing your data, ways of categorizing your data. There's a limit to how much you can do with shit data. You can't turn
Yep.
shit to gold.
Yep.
To put it this way, you can make sense of the shit, but you cannot turn shit into gold.
Yep.
And Palantir has direct access to the gold. So it's this is their competitive advantage. And their solutions are highly customized to their clients. So in a sense, they are also kind of like consultants. They have like teams working with like the clients engineers to build specific tools and specific AIs to solve targeted problems and solutions that the company has. So like, if you don't believe me, you can take a look at some of the performances of the companies that adopt Palantir, and the response has always been quite good. And looking at their financials also, compared to when they are at IPO, which they are now at IPO price, they are profitable against back then they are not profitable. They are not cash positive. Now they are cash positive. I feel like they are even more of a value buy now other compared to when they are in IPO. So yeah. But aside from like just AI itself, like when we talk about like big tech, right? Now it's Microsoft versus Google.
Yep.
It's going to be a dogfight, I think,
Yeah.
because like
Yeah.
you
I think
don't you
so.
don't look down on Google. Don't look down on Google. Their research is top notch. What Microsoft did was they bought OpenAI. So OpenAI is not very open source now. They should be called closed AI. And again, I think like in the near future, right, regulation will come for these companies, like for AI in general, because it can be quite dangerous, because like say big tech, right, they sometimes they do have like certain agendas. You know, uh, they have to be accountable at some level, and some level of transparency has to be provided if they want to provide this kind of services, because it does influence people's decisions and views on things. So it's the kind of AI that they produce has to be neutral in many sense.
Yep, I always felt that in terms of investing, right? I have learned as an entrepreneur, right, that if your investments tend to be done from a business standpoint rather than just a pure value hunter, right? If you invest your money like a business person, right, then you realize that what you are looking for is to make sure that the business you're investing in have people who are willing to take calculated risks and have a competitive advantage to provide a product or service, right, that people desperately want and willing to pay a lot of money for it in a growing market.
Yeah.
Right. That is something which I think all entrepreneurs strive to create. Lah. They want to create either a product or service where they get paid for, where it's very difficult for competitors to come in and take. So when you talk about impact on investments, it's not just due to AI that I'm concerned with. I think end of the day, it always goes back to the fundamentals, right? That whether or not I'm investing with people who are very good business operators, because that's really like the key, like the hardest thing I think to solve for any entrepreneur is to make sure that you have the right team leading the company to the right direction, right?
Yes.
So you talk about the ideas, the three main big ideas I think we generally have is crypto, Tesla, and Palantir. You know, these are just some of the ideas that we openly share. And I think Ryan has touched enough about Palantir. I think for my particular case, I like crypto as well as Tesla is because I like the operators that I know. Because no matter how the world will change, no matter how the Federal Reserve will increase or decrease rates, my experience as an entrepreneur is that if I am a good entrepreneur, right, the right mentality to take is not to give a shit about what the Fed says because I couldn't be bothered.
Thank
I'm
you.
too
Thank you.
busy. All right, I'm really too busy, right, on a day-to-day basis, right, trying to improve the product for my consumer or trying to improve the service experience for my consumer. I really don't have the time to look at the Fed interest rates. Right, I'm too busy already. Like every day I need to deal with fires after fires. I need to deal with HR. I need to deal with marketing. I need to deal with sourcing the right product. I need to deal with bureaucracy in the FANG. I'm too busy to give a shit about what the federal have to say about 4 or 5%. Because to me, it doesn't matter. Because if my business or product is working, right, and it's growing like 50% or 30 to 40% month on month, not even talking year by year, do you think I give a shit what the Fed has to say?
Yeah, like 0.5% or
It's not going to
zero
matter.
point 0.2 billion. It's not gonna matter. Your
Yeah,
if
it's not. It
your
only
execution
matters.
don't change. You
Yeah,
need still need to do what you need to do.
Yeah, it only matters, right? It only matters if I don't have any target to achieve, and basically I'm just living off the last generation's money,
Yeah,
right? Because to me
where
that
it's more
affects
like
because basically my
preservation
only
idea.
yeah, because if I'm in preservation mode where I got nothing to look forward to, I'm just wanting to preserve. Yes, it does matter to me. But as a business operator, as an entrepreneur, I've never really seen an entrepreneur, right, who basically tells the entire world, okay, I want to keep back lepak, relax, and I don't do any more work. The reason why you invest in entrepreneurs is because entrepreneurs are the type of people, right? They cannot sit at a beachfront and then sip pina coladas, right, and then lepak one. They can't do that because the reason why entrepreneurs give up working 8 to 5 is so that they can do their idea, right, 24/7,
You
right? Because
remind me
they
of this photo of like Elon Musk on the beach, and then his whole body is like white versus Jeff Bezos, who's like ripped.
yeah. So I think end of the day, if you are a person, right, who is at heart entrepreneur, you will understand why I say that the reason why we became entrepreneurs is because when the phone rings, we get excited.
Yes.
So generally, like, if you put your money right with people who can, you know, execute the business or idea well, then generally you don't really need to worry so much about AI because I think I'm betting on the fact that no matter what changes happens inside the AI space, the people who run the business right will be able to utilize it and then create value from it and exponentially create more value for the business.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, but
Yeah.
the way I like to see it, like from a like a technology perspective, right, is where like all these technologies come together, like what you mentioned, Tesla, Palantir, AI, and you have crypto. They all come together and reinforce each other, And some of the sectors that I'm looking at that will benefit from AI is semiconductors, number one.
Yep.
And then space exploration, Starlink specifically. I'm looking out for the IPO because
Mhm.
in the end of the day, ChatGPT, what ChatGPT is, right, is like an API core business. So you still have to go through internet to make a request on OpenAI, and then it only generates the output. So internet connectivity will be more and more important. And then I personally believe that all these cables, Wi-Fi, 5G, they don't really make sense because it's very physically limiting. You know, if you want to, like, say in Malaysia, Sabah and Sarawak, right? If you want to have good internet access, that's not very possible because, like, I still hear a lot of my friends complaining that internet is shit over there. You know, that's because the cables don't service there enough. There's not enough cables that service the more rural parts, because for all these telco companies, they think that that it doesn't warrant the investment of laying the cables into these rural areas. So I feel like there's still like a good 50% of areas that don't have good internet access, and this is where all the Starlink will come in. I think it's more important than 5G. I think it's more important, like all this internet connectivity, and to do like global coverage, fast global coverage, right? The better way is to launch satellites, and that's where Starlink comes in. And then again, like crypto, we mentioned, it serves as like security against AI, because like no matter how much the AI tries to manipulate, as long as the ledger is there, there's proof there. So security is security. And then yeah, semiconductors, we talked about it. Like the more transistors you throw at it, the better the faster the model gets, more efficient it gets. But again, like this complies to Moore's law, or rather some people say Moore's law is dead. Doubling your transistors nowadays means doubling your energy increase, and I feel like this is going to be a challenge in the future. So yeah, as an investor, I'm looking out at some of these trends out there.
Yep. Anyway, coming back, I think generally, right, the whole summary of this podcast, right, is that if you guys have, let's say, money invested into ideas, right, and then if you just go back to the fundamentals of making sure that when you invest in a company, you know the management, you know people that run it, right, and then you basically look at their track record, whether or not they have a history of executing. What you realize is that we go back to many of the topics we talk about in the podcast, and that is if the people can execute and if they generally are outperformers, generally they know how to outperform and generally they will know how to adapt. It's the same reason as to why I think me and Ryan enjoy doing the podcast, because I think generally when there is always like new items to deal with, right, we always have the ability to um, adapt to the situation. So like for example, if you have like AI, then generally we also do, we'll integrate it within our work and we can share our experience. So I think that is pretty much the gateway I hope that you guys have learned from this episode. And that is embrace it for its change, and learn how to use it in a very creative way. Because this thing is not going to once the genie is out of the bottle, there's no way putting it back. Right. Right, because the genie is out of the bottle already, so I don't really think like we can put it back into the bottle lah. So no choice, embrace it and learn how to use it lah. That's what I'm saying. So with that, is there anything you want to add, Ryan?
Yeah, I think I resonate with what you just said just now, and I think like this is definitely AI is definitely one of the biggest wave of change in this decade. So in the next decade, things are going to be different. AI will be widely adopted, not just by institutions with highly sophisticated computers, but rather people like you and me, normal people like you and me, with laptops at home or even your smartphone. AI will become very, very mainstream. And to truly future proof yourself and your investments, you need to kind of like position yourself and watch out for companies that adopt AI. The key thing is to not be resistant, but to be accepting but critical and skeptical. You most important thing is like when you use AI or like say ChatGPT, you still need to do a little bit of fact check if you rely it for information. And yeah, a healthy mix of open-mindedness and skepticism will go a long way to learning how to adapt and develop the technology which is called AI. Yeah, I think that should be it. It was a nice episode. Great speaking to you again after like 2 months.
okay, today we pretty much just cut out the FAQ because I think pretty much like me and Ryan, we also agree on the fact that generally for this type of episodes, right, we also realize that the FAQ is tend to be better when you have actually like um when we have like guests inside the podcast, you know. So generally for this episode, I think going forward, we'll try to reduce the FAQ so that we can make the podcast shorter lah. Because if not, I realize that our podcast can be 2-3 hours long. Yeah, but I really enjoyed this podcast. I hope that you guys have enjoyed it too. But one thing to also note is that me and Ryan have actually already like pivoted towards like the Twitter handle instead of Instagram now. I mean, we're still on Instagram at Food and Stongs as well as Aaron Goes Global, but I think pretty much both of us have really pivoted to Twitter. So you can find all our social handles into the description box of this, or you can just go to our Instagram. I think we should have our links inside there as well.
Yep.
Yeah. So with that, I would like to thank all of you for listening, sitting down, listening with us today. And you have any like questions and ideas for next podcast or episode, of course, just give us a reach out on our Twitter handles. And we'll see you in the next podcast.